Hey guys, it's Connor over at Soapbox Games, but you already knew that. Welcome back. Like and subscribe, comment, the whole shebang. Today, I'm going to be talking about Kena Bridge of Spirits, the biggest release arguably this week. Made by Ember Labs, a first-time studio that used to be an animation studio that did a bunch of animated shorts, commercials, headed up by Josh and Mike. They are brothers. This is their first time up to bat. So how did they exactly do? Well, I'll just get this out of the way right now. Personally, I think this is a Game of the Year contender. Top 10 for sure, not necessarily in my top 5. But I'm kind of going to get into this. I'm about an hour away from finishing the game. Originally, this was going to be some impressions or some thoughts, but I think at this point it's sort of a light review, even though I won't really call it that because I haven't beat the game. I haven't beat the last boss, and I haven't got that last trophy yet. So I won't get into too many story details, but the premise of the game is you are Kena, a spirit guide, which in this world is a child-friendly way of saying Grim Reaper, because that's what she is, whose whole goal is to help a village in the mountains, which has had some sort of cataclysmic event happen. Kena's main goal is to help these spirits still trapped in this corrupted land to move on to the afterlife, all while freeing darkness and chaos from the land. So that's all I want to say for the story right now. You have a general understanding about what the main plot is. I like it for the most part. It's serviceable, and it hits some very nice emotional plot beats that I think work pretty well. And if you're one of those people who get teary-eyed watching Pixar films, you're sure going to get some feels going into certain cutscenes. So something I haven't mentioned yet is Kena has some companions on this journey. These adorable little creatures called the Rot. And despite their creepy name, they are actually extremely cute little fuckers that essentially serve as Pikmin, question mark? You're able to use them in various ways in the game, specifically in combat. You can use them to distract enemies, help recharge your health, or incorporate them into your attacks after you charge up one of the Rot actions, which are those yellow fillable circles above Kena's health bar. And it basically, another purpose they serve is to also help clear corruption from the land. So the Rot also help in some light environmental puzzle solving, which effectively boils down to them helping you move a giant item to place it somewhere to climb up on, or place something somewhere to open up or activate a certain door or a certain pillar or a certain shrine, things like that. So they're really fucking cute. You can also put these little hats on them. It's a really nice touch of customization. There's like a fishing hat one, like a little fox mask. It's really cute. Now, to the next point, I want to talk about Kena's overworld / open world, depending on your definition of it. Visually speaking, it might just be one of the most beautiful indie titles I've ever seen to date. This year in particular has been a great year for players who like super animated looking games, and Kena, in my opinion, is top tier among those games. Also, a little side note, but the score for this game is absolutely fantastic. I'm not really a score guy when it comes to games. I don't sit there and be like, oh, this is really nice music, this is really nice orchestra, duh. In particular, though, this score is extremely fantastic. There is a certain moment after defeating a boss in particular, about halfway through the game, where I was about to bawl my little boy eyes out, and it had one of my favorite pieces of music in the entire game. I think it is my favorite piece of music in the game, and the best way to describe it is just beautiful. Now, the overworld to me is very similar to a lot of these older 3D Zelda titles. The one that really comes to mind, and the one that I've seen a lot of people sort of compare to, is Majora's Mask. There's really no mini-map. There's only an overworld map. However, I want to make this clear to whoever was in charge of the world design at Ember Lab. You did a very good job. Normally in games like this, it's hard to tell where the next objective is. And in Kena, they do what a lot of great open world games do, and they really don't hold hand the player very much. Normally in, obviously objective-based games, there's some sort of indicator, whether being on the minimap or some visual indicator like a marker on screen to show you this is where you're going to go. But Kena doesn't really do any of that. And what they do is basically, like I said, no hold handing. It's very intuitive. It basically allows the player to have an idea of where to go without looking at the minimap or the overworld map, really. And the way that they do this is by having memorable visual elements like a house on a hill or a giant tree in a forest to remember these areas, along with only having really a couple paths to get to these places. So memorization of these paths comes a lot easier than it would if you were in a giant open plain field. I really only had to look at the overworld map a few times just to see how far an objective was, but ultimately a lot of the times I knew the paths that I was going to already based, like off what I said, visual cues. So it wasn't that hard to get around. It was actually very nice. It's an extremely barren and lonely world, which makes sense given the context of the story, but it's ultimately incredibly fulfilling to explore. You know, you're going around every single corner just to see how gorgeous the view from a mountaintop will be, or what it'll look like when you see the waterfall for the first time. So it was really, really nice. Now, while exploring the world, you do have some things to do besides the main quest. There are a ton of collectibles, like I said earlier. I said there are different hats for the rots. There are also different artifacts, different currencies for upgrades, different masks, and different items to unlock houses in the village hub, right? One of sort of the, I guess you could call, side quests is to unlock every house in the village so all of the spirits can move on and you can get some upgrades and things of that nature. So if you're worried that it'll just be a straight shot from beginning to end of just story, they give you a decent amount to do besides just the main quest. Now, let's get into the second biggest part aside from the world in Kena that is going to take up a lot of your time is combat. I like combat for the most part, but to be blunt, it is the weakest part of the game so far, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like a lot of these PS2 character action games, combat doesn't really have a lot of weight or impact when actually playing. R1 is your light attack, R2 is your heavy attack, which is fairly standard in a lot of modern titles now. There is an upgrade tree with 5 separate paths, all of which open up different variations or maneuvers or upgrades of current moves that you start with. For example, R2 is your heavy attack, and pressing square while holding down R2 allows Kena to do a rot-based attack, causing a lot of damage to enemies. Overall, these upgrades for combat don't necessarily make combat deeper like a fighting game or a combo-based game, but they add some very nice, welcome variation. Eventually, you'll also unlock a bow and some energy grenades, which help keep combat feeling fresh. I gotta say that these are a very nice sort of step of pace in the combat upgrades. As soon as you get tired of using the staff, they introduce you to the bow, and as soon as you get tired of the bow, they introduce you to the grenades. And when you have all of these things at your disposal, the staff, the bow, grenades, and the rod abilities, combat is a much more enjoyable experience than you start out with, and can be quite challenging at certain times. Especially given how many bosses are in this game. This game is filled with a ton of bosses to play around with, and they are extremely hard. You know, there is a difficulty curve and spike. So, and there are only 3 difficulties to start out with. There's a 4th one, the mastery one, which gets you the platinum, which I don't think I'm gonna do. But I'm playing on the third level, which is the second hardest. It's pretty fun. It's really hard, but it's pretty fun. But however, this kind of leads me into my next point about the worst part of combat, in which I think they really do need to fix, and that has to be their parrying mechanic. Kena has this energy shield you use by pressing L1, and it becomes, you know, this giant energy shield where you get to block different enemy attacks. The shield has a meter, and getting hit when the shield is active drains that meter. If you're able to press L1 perfectly, though, when an enemy is attacking, you enable the parry mechanic. There are multiple multiple bosses throughout the game, and they are extremely fucking hard. They really are. Fuck Corrupted Taro. I don't like him. And I think the reason why they're so hard is essentially because of how broken this parry mechanic feels, right? You could easily see how some of these boss encounters could be if you could get the parrying down. And it's really weird because the enemy animations are telegraphed. You can clearly tell when an enemy is winding up for a certain move. You can clearly differentiate the different patterns that the enemies have quite easily, but it feels like when parrying that for some reason there's like an input lag for a couple seconds or a couple seconds delay, or it's like missing a frame of animation. I'm not really sure. Certain combat encounters can certainly be satisfying, but overall, I think the combat is just okay, which is fine once again, given that this is their first game ever. It's an indie title. I wasn't expecting, AAA combat right off the bat, so it's definitely a good base to build off of for future sequels. And with that said, Kenna is a fairly simple game, and overall, I would have to say that my time with Kenna so far, about 12 or so hours, is extremely well worth the $40 entry fee. And I would suggest for anyone who has been interested in this title and is still interested in this title and interested in third-person character action adventure games, to give Kenna a try, because it's a new IP, and if anyone knows that new IP is really hard to come by, and if anyone from Ember Lab is watching, I also want to just say bravo to you guys for your first game. It's not easy these days to make games, and somehow you guys managed to knock it out of the park. And with that said, I'm just kind of going to wrap things up really fast. I told you guys today was going to be a pretty quick video, straight to the point. I got a couple of things in the work. If you're new here, I do weekly uploads each and every week, normally around Fridays, of gaming related news, either reviews, retrospectives, gaming topical conversation videos, gaming news videos, so on and so forth. So please like, comment, and subscribe down below for your boy. And until next time, stay groovy, y'all.